For years I deadheaded my flower borders like it was a second job. Every other morning from late June through August, out I went with my snips and my bucket, working my way along the beds in the summer heat, bending over and clipping every spent bloom, one at a time. My knees let me know about it every evening. Then one afternoon I was walking past my neighbor Margaret's house, and I stopped dead in my tracks. Her front bed was wall-to-wall color, soft blue catmint spilling over the walkway, golden daisies swaying in the breeze, tall purple coneflowers, the whole bed glowing in the afternoon sun, and not a single faded bloom in sight. I had never once seen Margaret out there with a pair of snips, so I walked up and asked her. She smiled and said she did not deadhead those beds. She had simply planted flowers that take care of themselves. I went home that day and looked up every single plant she was growing. What I found changed the way I plan a garden to this day. Here is the truth that experienced gardeners discover eventually. Deadheading is not a law of nature, it is a choice. And for a whole category of perennials, it is a choice you simply never have to make. These plants either drop their spent blooms on their own, or they produce new flowers so continuously that the old ones are always hidden, or they are genetically wired to keep blooming no matter what. Today I am sharing the 7 I would plant in every low-maintenance garden, what makes each one special, and exactly how to use them together so your beds stay beautiful from late spring clear through the first frost without you ever picking up a pair of scissors. If you are new here, welcome to the Gardening Grandma. Hit that subscribe button right now. Let us meet these 7 plants. Before I walk you through the list, let me take a minute to explain why some flowers can skip deadheading entirely. Because once you understand the reason, you become a smarter plant shopper for the rest of your life. And some flowers are what gardeners call self-cleaning. Their petals simply drop away when they are finished, falling into the mulch and disappearing, so the plant never looks ragged in the first place. Others produce blooms in such constant succession that fresh color keeps rolling in faster than the fading can catch up. And a third group is genetically built to keep flowering regardless of whether seeds are forming, so removing old blooms barely changes anything. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. Leaving spent flowers in place is not a failure. In many cases, it is actually a gift. Those drying seed heads feed goldfinches, chickadees, and other songbirds well into autumn and winter. They give the beds structure and texture when everything else has gone flat and brown. A garden with standing seed heads dusted in frost has a quiet beauty that an over-tidied bed can never match. When you skip the deadheading, you are not being lazy. You are gardening the way nature intended. A few things these 7 plants share in common. Every one of them wants good drainage. If your soil holds water after a heavy rain, work in compost and coarse material, or plant on a slight mound. More perennials die from wet feet in winter than from cold itself. Nearly all of them want 6 hours or more of direct sunlight. And go easy on the fertilizer. Every plant on this list blooms better in average or even lean soil. Rich, heavily fertilized ground pushes these perennials to grow lush, floppy foliage at the direct expense of flowers. A light top dressing of compost in spring is plenty. Skip the high nitrogen fertilizer entirely. Plant number 1, catmint. If I could only recommend one perennial to a gardener who wants maximum beauty for minimum effort, catmint would be it. The botanical name is Nepeta, and the variety you will most often find at garden centers is called Walker's Low, which won Perennial Plant of the Year and earned every bit of that honor. Catmint forms a soft, billowing mound of silvery gray-green foliage. Brush against it and the leaves release a wonderful spicy, minty fragrance. Starting in late spring, the whole plant covers itself in slender spikes of lavender-blue flowers, and here is what makes it remarkable. Those flowers just keep coming, wave after wave, for weeks and weeks on end. Some varieties carry color from spring all the way into late summer without you lifting a finger. Give it full sun and good drainage, and that is essentially the end of the care instructions. Catmint laughs at poor soil. It shrugs off drought once established. Deer and rabbits leave it alone because of that aromatic foliage, which is a blessing for those of us who garden where the deer treat our flower beds like a salad bar. The bees and butterflies flock to it in numbers that will genuinely amaze you. On a warm afternoon, a mature catmint plant hums with pollinator activity. One optional tip: after the first big flush of bloom fades, usually around early July, you can shear the whole plant back by half with hedge trimmers. It regrows and reblooms even more heavily. But notice I said optional. Even if you never touch it, catmint keeps producing color deep into the season. And that shearing takes 2 minutes standing up. No bending, no fussy snipping of individual stems. Plant it along a walkway, at the front of a border, or spilling over a retaining wall, and it will reward you for years. Plant number 2. Russian sage. Where catmint gives you a soft mound at the front of the bed, Russian sage brings height and drama to the middle and back. It sends up airy 4-foot spires of tiny lavender-purple flowers held on silvery white stems. The overall effect is like a cloud of purple mist hovering over the garden, and it stops people in their tracks every single time. The bloom season on Russian sage is a marathon, not a sprint. It typically starts flowering in midsummer, right when many other perennials are throwing in the towel from the heat, and it carries on well into fall. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. The hotter and drier the weather gets, the happier this plant seems to be. It comes from the harsh steppes of Central Asia, so a scorching August in your backyard feels like home to it. The individual flowers are so small and so numerous that deadheading is not even physically practical, and thankfully it is not necessary. Even after the true flowers fade, the silvery calyxes that held them keep the plant looking dusty purple for additional weeks. You get months of visual interest from one plant that asks for almost nothing. Full sun is non-negotiable for Russian sage. In shade it flops and sulks. Give it lean, dry, well-draining soil. The aromatic foliage means deer and rabbits pass it right by. The one thing it appreciates is a hard cut back to 6 or 8 inches in late winter before new growth starts. One cut, once a year. That is the entire maintenance program. Try massing 3 or 5 plants together for a big drift of color. That silvery foliage flatters everything planted near it. Plant number 3, blanket flower. Let us warm up the color palette. Blanket flower, known botanically as Gallardia, produces daisy-shaped blooms in blazing combinations of red, orange, and gold, often with several colors banded together on a single flower, like a woven blanket, which is exactly where the name comes from. This is one of the longest blooming perennials in existence. In many gardens it starts flowering in late spring and simply does not quit until frost shuts it down. 5 months of continuous color from a single plant, and it achieves this without deadheading because it produces new buds in such constant succession that fresh flowers always dominate the show. This is a plant for tough places. Sandy soil, gravelly soil, hot exposed corners, that miserable strip between the sidewalk and the street where nothing else survives. Blanket flower thrives in all of it. My rule now is simple. Lean and dry is the recipe for blanket flower. Rich, heavy, wet ground is where it dies. If you have struggled to keep it alive in the past, overly fertile or soggy soil was almost certainly the reason. Butterflies visit the flowers all season long. When blooms do eventually fade, they leave behind round, fuzzy seed heads that goldfinches absolutely love. One honest note: blanket flowers tend to be short-lived, often lasting 3 or 4 years, but they self-sow gently and new seedlings pop up to replace the old plants, keeping the patch going indefinitely without you ever buying replacements. Another excellent reason to leave those seed heads alone. Plant number 4, daylily. Here is a plant that seems at first glance like it should not belong on this list at all. Each individual daylily flower lasts exactly 1 day. It opens in the morning, glows through the afternoon, and closes for good by nightfall. The botanical name Hemerocallis actually comes from Greek words meaning beauty for a day. So how does a 1 day flower earn a spot on a list about all-season bloom? Volume. Sheer, overwhelming volume. A mature daylily clump sends up dozens of stems, and each stem carries anywhere from a dozen to several dozen buds. Those buds open in sequence, one after another, day after day, for weeks on end, and here is the beautiful part. When each flower finishes, it wilts, shrivels, and drops away on its own. The plant is self-cleaning. Tomorrow's fresh blooms cover today's departures, and the clump always looks full of color. Daylilies come in nearly every color, except true blue, in sizes from 1-foot dwarfs to 4-foot giants, with bloom seasons from early summer to late. Plant an early, a mid-season, and a late variety together, and you can stretch daylily season across 3 months or more. Watch for reblooming varieties too. Types like the famous Stella d'Oro flower, heavily in early summer, take a short rest, then bloom again right up until frost. These are famously indestructible plants. Full sun brings the most flowers, but they tolerate light shade. They handle clay, drought, slopes, and general neglect. The one enemy worth knowing about is deer, who consider the buds a delicacy. If you have heavy deer pressure, protect them with repellent early in the season. Before I share the last 3 plants, I want to stop and ask you something. Drop your U.S. state or your USDA hardiness zone in the comments right now. I read every single one. Where you are growing determines which of these 7 will thrive effortlessly for you and which might need a little extra attention. Just your state, just your zone. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do that now. New gardening guidance every week, right here, completely free. Plant number 5, Gara. Our next flower brings something none of the others offer, and that is movement. Gara, sometimes called whirling butterflies or wandflower, produces long, wiry, waist-high stems dotted with small white or pink 4-petal blossoms. When the slightest breeze moves through, those flowers flutter and dance on their thin stems, and the whole plant looks like a swarm of butterflies hovering in midair. It is absolutely mesmerizing. Visitors to your garden will always stop and ask what it is. Gara is a Texas and Louisiana native, which tells you everything about its constitution. Heat, humidity, drought, blazing sun, poor sandy soil. This plant handles all of it with grace. It blooms from early summer straight through fall, continuously producing new buds at the tips of those ever-lengthening stems. No deadheading required, and no deadheading even sensible, given how the flowers are scattered all the way up each stem. It appreciates full sun, but will accept a little afternoon shade in the hottest climates. Like most plants on this list, its one absolute requirement is drainage. Gara grows a deep taproot, which is the secret to its drought tolerance, but that same taproot will rot in soggy winter ground. It also means the plant does not like being moved once established, so choose its location thoughtfully the first time. Plant it where the low evening sun can backlight those dancing flowers, and you will find yourself lingering outside at dusk just to watch. Plant number 6, Black-Eyed Susan. Now we come to an American classic. A flower so cheerful and familiar it feels like an old friend. Black-Eyed Susan, or Rudbeckia, produces those iconic golden yellow daisies with dark chocolate brown centers, and few sights in a summer garden lift the spirits quite like a big sweeping drift of them glowing in the afternoon light. Black-Eyed Susans bloom from midsummer well into fall. Will deadheading extend the show a little? Possibly at the margins, but this is a plant that flowers so generously and for so long on its own that the extra labor buys you almost nothing. Leave it alone, and it still delivers months of color. The variety Goldsturm is legendary for smothering itself in blooms with zero assistance. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. This flower gives you 2 full seasons of value if you keep the pruners in the drawer. First comes the summer-long golden display. Then after frost, those dark central cones remain standing on stiff stems, turning nearly black, and they become both winter sculpture and a bird feeder that never needs refilling. American goldfinches treasure Rudbeckia seeds. On a gray January day, the sight of bright yellow finches clinging to those seed heads above the snow will remind you exactly why you left them standing. Black-eyed Susans want full sun, but will accept part shade. And they are forgiving about soil as long as water does not pool. They spread into generous clumps and often self-sow, weaving through a bed in that natural, unplanned way that makes a garden feel established and loved. They are also wonderful cut flowers. Bring a few stems indoors all summer. The plant will not miss them. Plant number 7, coneflower. We close with royalty. Purple coneflower, Echinacea, is a North American native prairie plant that has become one of the most beloved perennials in the world, and it earns that devotion honestly. Big, bold, daisy-form flowers with prominent spiny central cones held on strong stems above coarse, healthy foliage, blooming for weeks from midsummer into fall. The classic variety carries that famous rosy purple-pink, but you can also find coneflowers in white, lemon yellow, mango orange, raspberry red, and glowing hot pink. One piece of hard-won advice I want to share with you. The older, simpler varieties closest to the wild species tend to be the toughest and longest-lived. Some of the newest hybrids are gorgeous in the pot at the garden center, but short-lived once they hit the ground. When in doubt, choose the sturdy classics. Coneflowers are drought-tolerant, heat-proof, largely pest-free, and unbothered by poor soil as long as it drains. They want full sun and room to grow. Pollinators mob the flowers all summer. Stand near a coneflower patch in July and count the different species of bees and butterflies working the blooms. You will lose track. Here is where skipping the deadheading pays its biggest dividend. Leaving those seed heads in place sets the table for one of the garden's finest autumn and winter spectacles. The cones dry into dark, bristly orbs that stand proudly through wind and snow, and goldfinches, chickadees, and juncos visit them all winter long. Those seed heads also self-sow modestly, giving you free seedlings to transplant or share. A tidied coneflower bed gives you flowers. An untidied one gives you flowers, birds, winter beauty, and new plants. That is not neglect. That is wisdom. Let me leave you with a picture of what these 7 plants look like working together as a team. Dinjan, a sunny border with Russian sage rising silver and purple at the back. In front of it, drifts of golden black-eyed Susans and rosy coneflowers stand shoulder to shoulder, with Gora weaving its dancing white wands through them in the breeze. Along the front edge, catmint spills its blue haze over the walkway, punctuated by the fiery reds and oranges of blanket flower, while clumps of daylilies anchor the corners with fresh trumpets every single morning. That border blooms from May until frost. It feeds bees all summer and birds all winter. It shrugs off drought, handles neglect, and asks for essentially 1 afternoon of cleanup per year in late winter when you cut everything to the ground to make way for spring. No daily deadheading, no weekly fussing, no guilt when you would rather sit in the shade with a glass of iced tea and simply watch it all. These 7 perennials make the kind of gardening possible that I think we all actually want. Beautiful, wildlife-friendly, and kind to the back and the knees. Whether you have a big sunny border to fill or just a small bed along the front walk, you can start with 1 or 2 from this list and build from there. Watch what they do. I promise they will earn a permanent place in your garden. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 7 are you already growing, and which one are you going to add this season? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this helped you, please share it with a gardening friend who could use a little less work and a little more time in the lawn chair this summer. Until next time, happy gardening, take care of yourselves, and take care of those beautiful gardens of yours.